What if the stories you tell yourself about your life aren't just reflections of your experiences, but the very framework shaping your destiny? What if by understanding the ancient myths passed down through generations, you could rewrite your own narrative and step into a more empowered, fulfilling life? Welcome to the Enlightened Life Podcast, where we explore the deeper layers of consciousness, transformation, and personal growth. I'm your host, Scott Allen. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Allison Stieger, an expert in mythology, storytelling, and personal transformation. Allison holds a master's degree in Mythological Studies from Pacifica Graduate Institute and has spent over 20 years guiding individuals through the profound and life-changing lessons found in myths from cultures around the world. Through her work at Mythic Stories LLC, she's helped countless people recognize and reshape the narrative structures of their lives, offering them the tools to move through challenges with wisdom and purpose. Her upcoming book, Unstuck, Finding and Following Your Path Through the Heroic Journey, brings these teachings to a wider audience, offering guidance to anyone feeling lost or unsure of their next steps. With a warm and compassionate approach, Allison creates a safe and transformative space for people to navigate life's most difficult moments through the lens of mythology, proving that ancient wisdom still holds powerful keys to modern challenges. Allison, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation.
I am as well. I've been looking forward to it. Why do you think mythology continues to resonate so deeply with us, even in today's modern world?
Well, I mean, that's the funny thing about myths, right? Is they are stories that have survived. And just the virtue of their survival tells us something really important about why they and how they continue to resonate. Like they have something that's really essential that speaks to how we operate with our human psyches that other stories, I mean, they need to catch up. Like I believe that there are stories being told today that will eventually be mythic, but we don't really know that yet. What we do know is that we've got these wonderful old stories thousands of years old from the beginning of our cultures that tell us something really key about what it means to walk through a human life. And what I love the most about myths is that they have this kind of regular pattern to them. And what that pattern shows us is that the things that we go through in life that are the most difficult, we have guidance on how to navigate that from the people that came on the planet before us. Human life wasn't really that different. I mean, it looked different on the outside, maybe, but what it means to essentially go through a repeating series of small deaths and rebirths throughout life, we have stories that show us how to navigate that, and that's what myths are. It is, and the ones that survive are the ones that show us, okay, we had this hard thing that it was happening to us just like you do, and we navigated it this way, and this is how we were successful. Or sometimes it is the case this is how we weren't successful and really don't do that. So we have these stories that say, okay, we had these moments too where we had to die and we had to be reborn, and we know that you're going through that too, and we're going to help you because we really want to. We care about you. We're your ancestors. We want to leave something behind that's going to help guide the next generation through the path that they have to walk as well. And to me, that is essentially the power of what a myth is.
Is there a common story that people share about why they are stuck, or what keeps them stuck? What is a common way that people are stuck today?
Well, I do think that there are moments in the pattern of story that I've just described where we are dying and being reborn, where we kind of refuse to take the next step. And we recognize this in myths. And we call this the hero's journey, the heroic journey. It's so common in myths, we call it the monomyths sometimes. And there are two places in that where we say, I don't want to go and do this scary thing that is going to result in a death of a version of myself. I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to refuse the call, refusing the call. You're being called to this heroic journey or this heroic adventure, and you really don't want to. And people will stop there, sometimes for just a moment. Sometimes they stop for decades. And then the other time that happens is we go through all of these hard things. We find allies, we meet villains, we meet monsters, we go through everything. We go through all of this growth, and we've learned something and we've pulled something out of the experience, but we're so comfortable being down in the below places that we don't really want to step back up and complete the journey. And there is a last step that needs to happen. And we call that moment the refusal of the return. So you're so comfortable. Like, for example, I work with people often that are in two sets of circumstances. They've been ill, or they're going through a divorce, or maybe it's just that their children have grown up and they don't quite know what to do with themselves. So their lives have changed. So they've lost something that mattered to them. And they're going through all of this in order to come out the other side. But they've gotten so comfortable being the person that is ill that even though the doctor said their cancer's in remission or, whatever, they still feel so used to being in that place that they want to just stay there because it's familiar. We are really reluctant to move out of a familiar space. And sometimes that means we get stopped in a really terrible place in our lives. And what myths allow us to do, or they show us how to do this, is they show us how to take the next step forward. And for me, that is it. It's like, okay, sometimes we recognize if we know that we are stuck, we are usually either stuck at one of those places or in the other place. So
Makes sense. And that brings me to my next question, because, you have your book coming out. We talked about that.
yeah,
It's called
yeah.
Unstuck, Finding and Following Your Path Through the Heroic Journey. How do you explore, or you do explore, the idea of the hero's journey and personal transformation? How can someone recognize which stage of the journey they're currently in?
Well, I mean, I think that understanding what the hero's journey is, or I call it, okay, let me just make a small point here because that matters to me. So it's been historically called the hero's journey. That comes from a book that was written in the 1940s by a guy named Joseph Campbell called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And that's fine, but the word hero has a gendered connotation to it. And it also has an identity connotation, like you are a hero. So you're Perseus or you're Hercules or, whatever, Odysseus. But the small change that I've made in the way that I work with this story is to call it the heroic journey, because then what you're doing is you're removing yourself from the idea that you're a hero or a heroine, because there's been a lot of debate about, like, are you a hero or a heroine? How are those stories different? But really, I don't think that's important. What is important is saying, okay, I am going to make a choice right now to pull on that heroic energy toward myself. And I hope we'll get a chance to talk about archetypes a little bit, because this is an important part of how I teach this, to understand that we are stepping into we're making a decision to choose a more heroic way of approaching the struggles that we go through in life versus just trying to survive something. And I think most people, when they go through difficult things, they are merely trying to survive it. And what I'm suggesting here in my book and in my work is to say there is a step beyond that we can choose to take. And that is going to bring a huge host of benefits for our own lives and for the lives of the people around us in our community. So I'm really encouraging everyone that hears my message and my work out in the world to say, okay, we don't feel heroic. Most people don't. I don't feel like Perseus in and out in any given day, right? But it feels so foreign and different, like this guy or, a person from ancient Greece. Like, what does that have to do with my life? Well, we can borrow that archetype a little bit to help us get out of that place of being stuck. So, hopefully we'll get into this a little bit more deeply. But I do say that recognizing, just knowing what the heroic journey is. And of course, this is in my book, it's in my work, it's on my website, it's in all the places. I am here to teach people about it if they don't know about it, but you can also just go on the internet, right? It's something that's easily learned about if it's new to you. So I would say that knowing where you are just by informing yourself a little bit about how these systems work can be really helpful for recognizing the place you are in your own story. And also, even beyond that, just recognizing that your own life is a myth. Like, you have a mythic system that exists in your life. And what that allows us to do is it shifts our perception of our own story just enough that it gives us a little bit of space between our own body and the self that we're carrying around all the time. And it pushes our story away from us just a little bit. And that space gives us an ability to work with our own narrative, to understand the story that we've been in. Like, for example, we often have stories told about us as children, right? Sometimes we call these creation myths, right? We work with them. So sometimes people get trapped in the narrative that their parents gave them. And it's really, really difficult to break out of that narrative. But sometimes if you can push it away by creating a mythic system that your story lives in, it gives you the ability to change your story. And that creates a lot of power for transformation in a human life. So.
Yeah. Tell me about architects, because you mentioned the word
Oh yeah.
architects. What does that mean?
Well, okay. So it's the word archetype actually is. So yeah, architect is a different job, but yeah. Anyway, so
What did you call it? What did you call it?
I said archetype.
Oh,
Archetype.
archetype. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm deaf too. I said architect. I'm like, how does architects fit into this?
Architects are lovely people
Archetype.
and they're very important, but this is not what we're
This is not it.
needing to
Architect.
borrow from right now.
There you go. I wrote
So
architect.
we will
Archetype.
be an architect of our archetypes, I suppose.
Right, right, right.
Okay, so an archetype is an idea that comes to us from the work of psychologist Carl Jung, and he suggested that we have these, to use a different similar word, we have almost these like prototypes of different ways of being a human being. So we understand that there are roles that we take on in human life, right? And those roles accrue a certain amount of energy through the power of the collective unconscious. So, for example, when you think about what the mother archetype is, no matter what your personal relationship with your mother is, or the mother figures you've had in your life, you know what a mother is and how that role in human life is different from a king or an attorney or a nurse or there's a lot of different ways that we can present as human beings, and those archetypes have a lot of energy around them. And part of my work is looking at the ways that archetypes are held by celebrities, but also how they're held by human beings in regular life. Like we have this a lot in our relationships with other people. This was really helpful to me. I have two teenagers, and part of being the parent of a teenager is recognizing that sometimes they need to push away energetically from their parents. They have to figure out how to differentiate who they are from who their family is, right? It's a really important part of growing up. And that's sometimes a struggle for the parents of teenagers because they're really pushing you away sometimes. And what I realized that was really helpful for me was that sometimes they could see me, and I am a human being that is vulnerable and flawed and changeable and all the things that human beings are. But sometimes they were not seeing me at all. They are seeing the mother archetype, and that's what they need me to be in that moment. They need the big, heavy, powerful energy of the mother archetype. So they have something strong to push against so they can separate themselves into their own individual personhood, right? So that was really helpful. So I say, okay, I recognize right now it kind of separated me from the problem, right? Like so they're pushing against it. Well, they're not, it's not personal now, right? Because I recognize that I'm being seen as an archetype. And we can start when we start to understand this, we can see sometimes other people treat us like archetypes. They see us as archetypes. We are holding a space for them that is absolutely not personal. It is all about whatever archetype it is that we're holding. So, we talked about the heroic journey a minute ago, and we realized too, if you go into this work, that we are going to be the hero or holding that heroic archetype in our own lives. But we're also going to show up in the heroic journeys of other people, right? So sometimes you're someone else's ally. Sometimes you're someone else's temptation away from the path. Sometimes you're the villain, right? Sometimes you are holding an archetype for other people constantly in all of your relationships. So once we start to understand that, it can really help us figure out how to navigate our relationships when people do things that just don't make sense. And what I've
Right,
learned
right.
is that sometimes when people do something that's kind of inexplicable, it's because they are reacting to an archetype. They are not reacting to the person inside of it. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. And would you say that this is, I mean, one of the questions I had was, do we really have that much control over the stories we tell ourselves? I
mhm.
mean, is this one of the ways that we can begin to rewrite that narrative by understanding what you were just talking about,
Yeah.
understanding that it's not me, it's
Right.
me as the archetype mother or father or parent or whatever you are that is
Well,
getting
I mean, I do think it can be extremely helpful because there are a couple of things that have to happen here. If you recognize, like, okay, say you went home for the holidays and you saw your mother, and your mother treats you like you're 8 years old every time you see her. So your mother is seeing you as a child archetype, right? She does not recognize the personhood that you have as an adult 35-year-old person or whatever, right? So now you've got a new piece of information in your relationship with your mother. This has caused you some level of frustration over the years. Perhaps you don't know how to get through to her. So now you know something important. Okay, my mother sees me as a child archetype. She is not seeing me at all. So now what you get to do is you get to have a conversation with her and you get to try to understand why she is doing that. Okay. And I really like to lead with a lot of empathy in these situations because there is some psychological need that is being met for your mother by doing this, right? There is a psychological need being met for my children by doing this the way that they're doing it. So if you understand, maybe your mother felt like the best time of her life was when she was the mother of an 8-year-old. And that was when she felt like her truest and best self. And she just really wants to hold on to that. Okay. So you can start to have those conversations to say, okay, I need you to see me as this different person. I need you to step into a more mature and nuanced relationship with me. Or you can even say, okay, I understand that there's a need that's being met for you in that in the psyche for that child archetype. So I can be that for you a little bit, but there's going to be other times that I need to kind of guide you over here. And what often ends up happening is if there's resentment in a family or in a relationship between two people, because one person's holding an archetype and the other one it's not right for them, you have to negotiate your way out of that. So like if you're like I see this with women a lot, right, when I work with women, the caregiver archetype. Okay, so there are a lot of women that struggle with this. They are so that women are often very called upon to take care of everything, to run the household, take care of the children, do all of this stuff. And some women are really okay with that. They really enjoy that. And there can be a lot of power in holding an archetype, right? So if you don't want to be the archetype anymore, what you have to also do is you have to let go of the control that you have through holding that archetype. Archetypes are very powerful. This is a really powerful force in the human psyche. So when you're holding that for someone, there's a certain amount of power for you that's associated with that. So you can be that for them and hold on to that power. But if you don't want to be that, if you want to go deeper into the relationship with them, you have to be prepared to let go of some of that. So like I recognize this, right? I'm a fantastic cook. I love to cook. I always make our Christmas dinners, our Thanksgiving dinners, all these things. Now that's a lot of work, right? Now
Yep.
I could ask my two teenage sons to cook Christmas dinner. Okay. And they would absolutely do it. They would step up and they would take care of it. But I recognize that it would not be the same as if I did it. Right? Now, okay. So I can not have the work. I can just stay in my pajamas and drink coffee all day. But on the other hand, it's not going to be the way I want it to be. Right. So when we're negotiating these energies with our loved ones, we have to recognize what we're getting from it and what we're giving up by moving away from it. So this is a really complex issue. It requires a
Sure.
lot of nuanced thinking. It requires a lot of real empathy for each other and wanting to deepen our relationship into more intimacy, which can be a really powerful and beautiful thing for having a better life on this earth with the people that we love. But it does take a little bit of real wisdom and as we learn our way through this, like how can you do this for each other? When are you content to be that? When do you want to be seen? We don't always want to be seen, right? Sometimes we don't want to be seen and we hide behind the archetype, and that happens as well. So
And I love that because, I mean, I just, thinking, I wish I had that information in my life when I was a teenager. And I'm glad that I have it now as I'm heading into life with a teenager very shortly, which I
good
know
luck.
is,
Good
I
luck.
know it's, well, and it's difficult. I mean, I haven't really seen it yet, but I see the changes that
Yeah.
age brings, right? And I can understand the way my mother felt or my father felt when I pushed back or pushed
Right.
not away. There was never a feeling like I don't love you anymore. It was never that.
Oh
It
no,
was
well, no,
just
exactly.
independence. It's an
Yeah,
independence thing. But I can understand the feelings they must have felt at that time as you start feeling them yourself as a parent. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
to have that information going through it, and we can use this in our jobs, we can use this with our
absolutely.
friends in many, many different ways. Bringing it back to the myth part of it just for a
Mhm.
moment,
Of course.
is there one in particular, one myth in particular, because you studied them from all over the world? Is
Yes,
there one in
absolutely.
particular that you find especially relevant today to modern day life?
Well, there is one that I really okay, and this is a hard question, right? It's like asking me what my favorite book is,
Right.
but
I know, I know.
but but there is one myth that isn't necessarily as well known outside of maybe psychological circles or whatever, but it's so powerful. And one of the reasons I love it so much is we've really only had it for about 100 years. This is the story of the descent of Inanna. This is a Mesopotamian myth, and these clay tablets that these myths were written on were found literally in the 1920s. So the problem with Greek myths are wonderful, but you've got lots and lots of layers of individual human minds that are kind of it's filtering through as scholars deal with it or translators or whatever. So this is this beautiful shot from the past, right? And what you've got the story of Inanna. She is a goddess that's very much like Aphrodite or Venus, this goddess of sunlight and sexuality and all of these beautiful, powerful things. And she's a goddess of the upper world. And she's decided that she wants to go into the underworld to comfort her sister, who is the goddess of the underworld. Her name is Ereshkigal. So Inanna takes on all of her accoutrements. She has what are called mays, and mays are kind of symbols of civilization. So you've got a crown and a scepter and a necklace and a robe and even makeup and everything. And she puts on everything that makes her powerful. And she just goes down into the underworld and she has to go through 7 gates in order to get down. And at each gate, she has to give up another part of who she is. So she lets go of her crown first. She's required to give something up at every gate. So she goes through all of these 7 gates. By the time she reaches the underworld, she is naked. She's even lost her makeup and everything. And then she stands in front of her sister, and her sister kills her and hangs her body on a meat hook. Okay, now she's down there for 3 days. Just like Jesus, all right? These stories
Okay.
have these patterns for a reason. But before she had gone down, she made an arrangement with her maidservant to ask for help from the other gods if she didn't come back. So this maidservant goes to 3 different gods. Finally, the third one agrees to help. He takes the dirt from underneath his fingernails and he fashions little, like, if you know what the golem is, it's a creature made out of mud. It's a story out of Prague, of the Jewish population of Prague. So they're almost like little golem, right? They're brought to life, but they're not really alive, right? Like they're just dirt. So and he gives them the food of life and the water of life. So they go down into the underworld. They are not triggered by the gates because they're not alive. They go down there. Ereshkigal is in labor and they show compassion for her pain and she offers them anything they want. And they say, we want the dead body hanging in the corner. And she tries to offer them everything, right? She offers them riches and power and, fame and anything they would want. They don't want anything. They want the body. So they finally, after several refusals, which is very common in these stories, they get the body back. They sprinkle the food of life and the water of life on her body. She rises back up and she reascends into the upper world. She finds all of her people and they're all mourning for her. And unfortunately, the rule of leaving the underworld is she has to send someone back in her place. So she goes and she meets her maidservant, who is clearly in mourning for her, doing all the rituals of mourning. She goes through several people and she finally finds her husband. And he is sitting under a tree, strumming his lute with the goats and the maidservants and all just so happy in the sunshine. It's all beautiful. And she sees all these women around him and she says, okay, you can have him. And they take him and they take him down into the underworld. And then we move into the next myth. Okay. So this is a very common type of descent into the underworld story, but this myth is so beautiful because it has so many psychological truths in it. Now, I could spend the next 10 years unpacking this myth with you, and we don't have that kind of time today, but I will tell you that one of my favorite things about it, the very first line of the myth goes like this. It says, Inanna turned her ear to the great below. So imagine like turning your ear to listen to this thing that's calling you from under the earth. Now, the thing that I find so interesting is the cuneiform. It's written in cuneiform in the language of Mesopotamia, these little symbols, right? The cuneiform symbol for ear and the symbol for wisdom are the same. So she turns her ear to the great below, but she's also like turning her wisdom. There is something calling her that she needs to learn from this journey into the underworld. And the fact that that is the same thing, that you're turning your ear toward hearing something that is speaking to you. I mean, that image alone, that one symbol opens up this whole beautiful flower of the power of what myth has to offer, right? We can do this with any myth. Like take a stanza of the poetry, or you take a line, or you even take one word or one image, and it has so much psychological truth in it. And we can sit there for hours and just unpack that, right? So to me, this is such a perfect example of the power of mythology and what it has to offer to teach us psychologically about how to navigate our lives. Because we let go of things as we go into these descent states. We have to separate ourselves from parts of our personality that we really don't want to let go. We have to let go of things that came before. And even at the very bottom of it. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with slaughterhouses, but meat hooks exist because after, say, a cow or something has been slaughtered, you hang the animal on the meat hook, and all of the, the blood and everything, all the fluids of the body, it's meant to drain all of that out, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yep.
she's been killed, and she's still not giving down into the deepest part of the world, right? She still has more of herself that is going to be released before her journey starts again. I think this is a really beautiful example of what we can learn about creative work, like how hard it is to truly
Sure.
create great work. Like this is what is required of us, right? So anyway, there's a million more things I could tell you about this myth, but this one in particular is just so powerful. It's called the Descent of Inanna. There are translations of it available, really beautiful, different ones. You can look it up on the internet. If anybody's curious about reading a little bit more about it, I would encourage you to do so. So yeah, so this is, everything that I just said. That's just it's so
Well,
good. Right? I'm
and
so
I'd like to
excited.
challenge people too, if they do read this or if they're familiar with it, in the comments, maybe put a little note about what
Yeah.
you take from it and what you
Yeah.
understand from it and how you feel it could affect you in your life, or how there's a relationship to the modern world. I would love to hear what people think as they go through this. To also, thinking about the myths, a lot of them have mentor figures guiding the hero.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that, meaning mentorship in personal transformation? And
Well, here's what I have to say about that. That is such a crucial part of this. And we get that word mentor from the Odyssey, right? For those of you that are familiar with that, the mentor was the man that was left behind by Odysseus when he left Ithaca to go away to fight the Trojan War. This is the guy that he left to kind of raise his son in his stead. So he was the guy that guided Telemachus as he grew up, right? So we have that word from mythology. And this is the beauty of mythology, in my opinion. Now, I talked earlier on about how our ancestors left us these stories, right? So we went through this hard thing. Like, I think if you think about the Odyssey, most people know at least some of the high points of the Odyssey. Odysseus goes through all of these things. He ends the Trojan War through his cleverness. He goes through all of these mistakes, and all these crazy things happen to him, and he finally returns home, right? So, including going into the underworld. But all of these stories, and not just myths. I would argue that the work that other people that came on the planet before us that they left behind after they went on their heroic journeys are the mentors that you might need, right? So if you have a favorite painting or a favorite book or a favorite piece of music or anything, if there's something that has brought you succor or taught you something or guided you and made you think of the next thing that you needed to know in order to continue on with your journey, that person, that artist or that thing, that book or whatever is a mentor for you. So you can use a myth, you can use a painting, you can use any of these things. So all of that's been left behind for you. And now here you are. You are on your heroic journey. You are going through your illness or your divorce or whatever it is, whatever hard thing that life has thrown at you. You can, as I said before, you can choose to survive. You can hunker down and just kind of keep breathing until it's over. That is a choice that you have. And that's one that most people make, honestly. But if we are able to borrow that heroic archetype for a little while, if we are able to step past into the path a little bit farther, past that refusal of the call, actually engage with heroic journey, find those mentors that we need, find those allies that we need, confront the villains, do all of these things that we have to do, now you're one of the most important parts of the heroic journey is that you find a treasure and you gather this treasure to yourself. You defeat a dragon and you've now got this hoard or whatever. So after you hit that moment of refusal of return, if you're going to continue on with your heroic journey, you are going to, in fact, bring that treasure that you had gained from that experience back to your community. And now you have benefited from all of these mentors and people that have come before you. Now you get the privilege of being that for somebody else, right? And to me, that is the essential part of this, is you start out as an individual on this path, people help you along the way, and now you've come out of this terrible experience and you are stronger for it and you have something to offer back to your community. So we learn from the people that came before, we go through what we go through, we are transformed by it, and we have something now to bring to somebody else. And it could be a painting, a great work of art or whatever, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a conversation with someone at a bus stop. It could be a recipe. It could be something that you leave behind for somebody else that's going to bring them what they need in order for them to do what they have to do, right? So now you've got this beautiful continuity of human experience where we help each other make our way through. And that to me is the power of this work of understanding mythology in this context to say, I have a greater purpose for myself than just surviving the hard moments of my life. I have the privilege of pulling what I need to out of this so that I have some word or something that I can offer to someone else that's going to help them figure it out as they go through. I mean, I find that the most beautiful thing in the world. And we have this beautiful word that captures this exact thing. And I'm going to share it with you now. It comes to us from the Romani people of Spain, from the flamenco community. And this word is duende. Have you heard this word before, duende?
no, I'm not familiar.
Okay. So in the West, we think a lot about inspiration coming from above, from the heavens, right? So it rains down on us like rays of light from the sun. Okay. So that is one way of thinking about how we get inspired to do anything. Okay. Now this Romani people of Spain, they have a different way. They have this word duende, and it describes the way that human life is so painful sometimes that we take our blood and our sweat and our tears and it flows down from us into the earth through our painful experiences. But what duende is, if you've ever been to a flamenco show, you might have seen this. We are going to pull that energy, all of that blood, sweat, and tears back up out of the earth. It's going to rise up through our feet, through the dance, through flamenco, into the hands of the guitarist, into the voice of the singer singing. And this is what we do, right? This is describing exactly what we're doing. I have the power as a human being to take the most difficult thing that I've ever experienced and alchemize it into beauty, art, and transformation. That is what duende is. This is the opportunity that we have by going through our heroic journeys and being transformed. And I don't know, I find that calling to be absolutely sacred, and it gives me so much purpose to think about my struggles this way, right? And I think that anybody can do this. So
That's great. Really, truly. What role does fear play in the hero's journey? Can people move through this fear, or how can they move through this fear when facing, life's challenges?
well, I think that one of the things that we forget about heroism is that it's not the absence of fear. It is
Right.
doing the thing that you're called to do despite being afraid. Okay. So that just understanding that, like, I am afraid every day. Honestly, every single day. And it's just like sometimes you just have to do the thing anyway. And this is what being stuck is, right? This is why it's such an important integral part of this conversation. We recognize that we'd really just rather not. As human beings, we're kind of inclined to want to not upset the apple cart or whatever the expression is, right? We want to keep things as they are. We want to keep things, that's why when someone says, I want a divorce or you're fired or you have cancer or whatever, it's a really, really disconcerting thing to hear because you really don't want things to change, even if things are kind of bad, right? Sometimes it's really hard to hear that the relationship needs to end or change or something, but this is what it is, right? Like we are human beings that are afraid often, and some people are maybe
Yes.
less afflicted with this than others. I don't know, but this is where we get the power of the archetype, right? The way that we can handle it. And you can physically do this, right? Like if you want to do a little exercise with me, let's just take this. If say you have to go into a meeting and tell your boss something that they're not going to want to hear, okay, and maybe feeling a little bit scary for you. Well, I would invite you to just close your eyes and pull the energy of the heroic archetype onto you. Like literally move your arms like that. Like say, okay, I'm going to borrow the hero's archetype. I'm going to pull that onto myself. And you will find that if you set your mind that way, you will feel more capable of doing the hard thing. And here's what you're going to do though. You're going to go in and you're going to have that meeting and you're going to do the thing that you're terrified to do. And then when you're done, you're going to release it. You're going to let go of the heroic archetype because trying to carry an archetype all the time is really, really damaging to the human psyche. You can see this in some of our celebrities and some of our politicians, right? I mean, it will break a human psyche. Like, I think that Marilyn Monroe had a very Aphrodite like archetype that she was holding, and I believe it broke her. Like, you see this happen with people if they turn to addictions and any number of things to deal with this because it's really, really hard to hold an archetype all the time. But we can borrow it, right? It's a temporary assuming of this big energy of what it has meant from the beginning of human time to be a hero. You pull that onto yourself, physically move your body. Pretend you're putting on armor or something, right? Like, okay, I am ready. I'm going to go in, and then you go and do the thing, and then you let it go. Okay. And it will actually help you do the thing that you have to do that is scary. So this is something that I do recommend. I do this myself. Like if I'm feeling scared about something that I have to do, I will physically do that. Like I will actually do that. And it really does help you, pulls you into that space a little bit.
That's great. What are some practical ways people can begin using mythology and storytelling in their daily lives?
Well, I mean, I would say that just read some, right? I mean, most
Yeah.
people they read them when they were 11 or 12. Maybe if you're a young person, you might have been really into Percy Jackson like 10 years ago, right?
Right.
I mean, I think people are interested in it. It really seems to hit kids when they're between 8 and 13 years old. There's a lot of kids that have had this fascination. So, and it can be a little bit tricky if you go on the internet and you find and not necessarily. I mean, you might find the language to feel a little bit like homework. It can be archaic. It can be a little bit strange. It feels like prayers sometimes because it was often used in ritual contexts. And I consider that to be a big part of my job is to help kind of translate that. Like, let's find the ways in which we can work with this stuff. But even without that, like, I mean, certainly go to my website or look me up or whatever, and that's fine. But just find a copy of the Odyssey. There's some great translations out there, and just see what speaks to you. Try out different ones. It may not be Greek myths. It may be Irish myths or Aboriginal Australian
Mhm.
myths or, Native American, anything. Any culture has them. Maybe try whatever wherever your family is from, try some of those myths and see if they resonate for you. And just play with it a little bit. Just open yourself up to some of these old stories coming in. And there's millions of ways to engage with myths on the internet. Lots of people, talking about myths in different ways. So I would say just give it a try. Like try the Anana myth, perhaps. If that was a story that seemed interesting to you and I just described it, that is a copy of something you can get just by Googling it on the internet. You can go and read it. And what I really like to do, like if that sense of archaic language and like rhythm in the language is a little bit intimidating, what I like to do too is like treat it as if it was like, not everybody has gone to church or done that, but it has kind of a rhythm to it, the language that can be helpful. And I say that because myth and ritual go together pretty tightly. And
Sure.
I do this a lot with my people, right? Like we need to move the body, like incorporate it into the body kind of energetically a little bit. So if you allow yourself to like maybe even read it out loud or listen
Mhm.
to it while you're moving your body like on a walk or something, like put on your headphones and just listen to it while you walk, then you will start to find a path into the storytelling that might be a little bit unexpected. It's not just like sitting on your couch and opening a book or reading it on your phone or whatever. Movement actually does help integrate the storytelling into your body. So I do this when I lead retreats. We always talk about the myth, and then I have this program that I created in yoga poses that allows you to kind of experience a myth through the power of the poses. So we map the myth to the yoga poses itself. So
Oh,
you
wow.
actually go on a heroic journey yourself through your body. Maybe you just heard the story of Anana from me telling you, but now you're going to feel it in your body. And I cannot believe the power of what people have experienced through doing it this way, because we often neglect the body, right? We need to include our body in this process. And if we're willing to do that, if we're willing to say, okay, I'm going to make sure that my body knows this in the same way that my mind does, that is the moment that real transformation starts to happen. You will start to break through into new insights. New things will start to happen that are unexpected. And that is when you really start cooking with gas, as they say. Like things really start to shift and change for you. And it is absolutely powerful and wonderful. So give it a try.
I love that. And as I was a high school student at once too, so I could tell you, even studying Greek mythology is not always the most exciting thing when you're 15, 16, 17 years
Right.
old. How can we come back to this as an adult, that might have that memory and say, you know what, I want to see now, like, what we may find something different in this that we didn't see
Yeah.
when we were being forced to read it as a 14 or 15-year old. I
Well,
think
oh, go ahead, please. Please finish.
no, no, that was it. I feel
Oh, okay.
people, may find something different that they,
Yeah.
and it's taking that first step to find the one that resonates for you.
Yeah, and if you're hearing this and being like, "Oh, I remember Myth. They were kind of a drag that was not fun for me," and I get it, I really do. Like sometimes reading this stuff can feel like homework, and I would actually suggest to you to sit with that resistance a little bit. Like if you're feeling that right now, let that teach you something that you need to know. Okay, that is your body trying to tell you something and your mind trying to tell you something. So if you're feeling it, that is a refusal of its own, right?
Right,
So
right.
that this work is very powerful and these stories have survived for a long time. So if you're like, oh, I don't want to go read Beowulf, God, that sucks. Right?
Yeah,
like okay, sure, maybe Beowulf is not the one for you. Like you go, and there's a million myths out there from cultures all over the world. There's just one that I love. It's called Mawindo. It's this character, this heroic. It's an epic that comes to us from Africa, from West Africa actually, and it's this beautiful story that follows the same beats of any other heroic journey that we might have seen out of Greece or Norse myths or whatever. But it's got its own flavor that's purely, I hate saying African because Africa is a very large place, but
sure.
it will show you some of the things that you need to know in a very fresh way, because I don't know how many people out there have heard of Mawindo, but it's not as well known, right? It might need to be as famous as Hercules or Odysseus or whatever. So if you need to, just ask yourself some questions like, do I need to go back and read the Odyssey again? Or do I need to go find Mawindo? It's spelled Mwindo for anyone listening. If you want to try to find it, don't try to Google it based on the sound that I just made. Mwindo, Mawindo. Yeah. So, and again, I would invite anyone, if you're wondering about this, if something about this conversation sparks your curiosity or makes you feel like you need to engage with this more, you are always welcome to reach out to me on my website and I will make recommendations for you specifically. And I will help try to guide you to the next place that you need to be,
That's
whatever we
great.
can do in 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's perfect. If you could leave our listeners with one powerful insight about their personal story and transformation, what might that be?
Well, I would say that you are not the stories that have always been told about you. You have a choice in how you craft the narrative of the life that you want. So if your life feels unsatisfactory to you or there's something about it that you want to change, you have the power to shift that narrative. And this is an absolutely perfect way to do it. Everything that you need is there for you already. You have more allies than you know, including myself. And I just really encourage you to find the help that is there and waiting for you, because you will make it through and you will be able to go through your path of transformation.
I love that. Anything else you'd like to share before we close out the episode?
Well, I don't think so. I feel like having made the invitation to anyone that's listening to come and find me, it's very easy to do on my website at mythicstories.com. So please don't be shy about that. I absolutely love having these conversations, and I would just really encourage you. And if you want to hear more about my work, there's more information on the website as well, classes, things of that nature. So don't be shy. Come and find me. I am your ally, and I'm here.
That's wonderful. And I am going to put all your information where they can reach, find your website and all of that will be in the description. So if you're listening to this right now, just look down in the description. We'll have all of that information right there for you. So as we wrap up today's conversation, I hope you've been inspired to look at your own life through a new lens, one where you are the hero of your own unfolding story. Allison has shared such profound wisdom on how myths, storytelling, and narrative shaping can help us navigate challenges, embrace transformation, and find meaning in our journeys. If today's discussion resonated with you and you're ready to explore how mythology can help guide you through life's twists and turns, I encourage you to visit her website at mythicstories.com. There you can learn about Allison's work, access valuable resources, and stay updated on her upcoming book, Unstuck, Finding and Following Your Path Through the Heroic Journey. And while you're online, don't forget to check out my website at www.mediumscottallen.com. I'd love to meet you and help you along your journey toward enlightenment. Book a reading, attend one of my live events, or grab a copy of my new book, In the Presence of Light. Thank you for tuning into the Enlightened Life Podcast. Remember, the stories we tell ourselves have the power to shape our lives. So choose a story that empowers you, guides you, and reminds you of the hero within. I'm Scott Allen. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep writing your own mythic journey. Thanks for joining us.